I've never made any videos before about any of my silly little projects, but this one's coming out pretty good. It's impressing me. I'm hoping it's going to impress you too. I'm working on a tool that's going to help me put slots in boards. And basically I'll show you a little bit why that's a necessary thing. I'm going to be replacing my fence here in the backyard. As you can see, it's pretty dilapidated looking. You can see where the dog's chewed through some sections. He's digging under it, and it's just looking pretty terrible. So basically, I've come up with a design of my own that I'm going to use to fix it. And I decided I wanted to put horizontal boards on the fence. I think it's going to look a little nicer, add a little interest. Got lattice work across the top. This is the prototype section, so it looks kind of terrible. As you can see, some of the boards are warping, and things aren't as great as it could be. There are plans to put supports in certain sections to fix the warping. This is a 6-foot section actually, and actually I'm going to do 8-foot sections, which is going to allow me to space out my support boards a little bit and make things look a little less busy. But the reason that I'm building this tool is to accomplish these slots here in the posts and across the top of it. But basically, each board is going to slide down into this slot, and that's going to keep it stable. I don't know if they call these dado slots or rabbet joints or what exactly this is called, but if you can see here on this board, there's a slot all the way down 8 feet of it, and that's going to be where the boards actually slide into. I've got a ton of those that I need to do, so I've got about 100 of the 2x4s that I need to do, and then I've also got 4x4 posts that I've got to do two-sided. So if you figure that out, that's about 200 cuts plus probably a lot more, just for the simple fact some of the boards aren't going to be perfect. They might have to be redone. I think I've calculated a little bit short, but basically 200 plus cuts that I've got to make, and I want them to come out all the same. And it was turning out to be a two-man job, because basically when you're using the table saw, you're pushing the board in. You've normally got a fence on one side, and the board rides along the fence as it does its thing. But you've got to make sure that you're keeping the board tight against your fence and tight against the table. And that's why it was turning into a two-man job, because, you know, we've got to make sure it's going in good, and we got to make sure it's coming out well. So basically, I'm building a tool that's going to accomplish that by myself. And you can see this tool here behind me. I'm going to turn off the camera right now and go to a different shot. So I went ahead and spun the camera around so I could show you what I wanted to show you a little bit more clear. As I was explaining before, normally you would just have a fence on your saw, and you would keep your wood tight up against it and push it across your saw. I don't have the original fence that came with this. Generally they're made of metal or plastic, and the wood slides along it pretty well. So I started by just clamping a board to it, and that was going to help me guide it. But what I was finding is that I was getting too much friction by using just a 2x4 here. The wood pushing against the 2x4 had too much friction. I was having to force it really hard to get it through there and keep it tight at the same time. So I went with rollers. And actually what I decided to do is put rollers on both sides so that I didn't have to make sure that I was pressing it this way. So I have rollers on the inside fence. This is what guides it and makes sure that the cut is where it needs to be, and that it's straight. And then I have rollers on the other side that are actually spring-loaded, and these are what push it tight against that one. The other thing that I needed was to make sure that it was being pushed down onto the saw, and that it was going to cut at the same depth all the way through. So I did a similar thing. I used larger wheels and put those on door hinges here, and that goes down and pushes the board tight to the saw. The blade that I'm using, you may have seen these before somewhere. This is called a dado blade, and it's basically a stack of saw blades. And that's what allows me to cut the half-inch cut, a little bit wider than that actually. But that's what allows me to make that cut. So each time I push the board through, all of these blades here are going to make the slot that we need, and the wheels are going to keep it tight up against it. And actually, you'll notice I have two of the saws here. I burned out my first motor, the original one. I bought this saw at a garage sale, and I think the guy must have kept it in the rain or something because it was pretty rusted out. I had had problems with the bearings in the past. I had taken it all apart, rebuilt the motor, re-greased everything, and things worked a lot better, but it turns out these ball bearings in here still had quite a bit of rust on them. So you can see here, it blew up, and I had to buy another one. Luckily, on Let Go, I was able to find pretty much the exact same saw. It's got a different label on it, but what I realized is these are both Taiwan, which is another reason that I probably burned it out. It's a little bit of a cheaper saw. Definitely not a Craftsman. But it's the same exact saw made by a different company. This one is Central Machinery, is what it says on there. Mine says made for Kmart. So I'm hoping this new one's going to last a little bit. I have my doubts just because this particular table saw wasn't designed for such heavy duty work. But the other thing that I've done to avoid burning this motor out is I've put switches on here. Originally I was flipping on the switch, leaving it on for 20 minutes while I cut a bunch of boards, and obviously I'm generating a lot of heat that way. So what I decided to do is put these switches on here that's going to allow the saw to only run when there's actually a board being cut. So this wheel will start lifting as soon as I put a board in. Before it hits the saw blade, it'll start allowing it to spin the saw blade, and then this switch is going to keep it running until after the board has been pulled out. So both of these switches are hooked up in parallel. They both do the same thing, and if either one of them is open, the saw blade will be running. What I'm going to do again is flip around the camera here, and I'm going to show you how it works a little bit. I'm going to show you a live shot of me cutting a board with it, so stand by. Alright, so here we go. I got the camera in place. I'm going to plug this in real quick. It's probably going to be loud during the video, but you'll get an idea on how it actually operates. So let me get this thing plugged in. And let's run a board. So there you have it. Pretty simple design, but I was pretty impressed with it. I'm sure there's tools that are already built that do the same thing that I'm doing here, but this was a lot cheaper. So the first saw I bought for $10 at a garage sale. The second one I paid $30 for. This motor sounds a lot better. I don't foresee that I'm going to have issues, but I do have my doubts. Like I said, it's a cheaper table saw, and it's not meant for this kind of work. But I'm going to make it do it anyway. And if I have to, I'll buy another one. But this assembly should work even if I do have to put it on a different table saw in the future. And then I've got the door hinges were a couple of bucks. Each roller was $2 or $3. I actually had these large rollers already from a toolbox that we never actually put the rollers on. So I just had those in a box. So a lot of this I already had. These are switches. One of them's from a microwave oven door. The other one I believe is out of a dishwasher. But so most of this was free to put it together. So I think I've got about $30 or $40 in the tool itself, and then the table saws I've probably got another $30 or $40. So for under $100 I've built a tool, basically a sawmill of my own, that's going to let me make all of the boards that I need to put my fence together. So like I said, I was just a little bit impressed by how things came together, and so I thought I'd show it off a little bit. So hope you liked it. Thanks.